I will talk to you today about the initial archaeological interventions of the Hatta tombs that have taken place. So Hatta is located 134 kilometers from the city of Dubai, and it borders with Ras Al Khaimah in the north and Oman in the southeast. Also with Ajmani and Masfa in the west. The archaeological site of Hatta is in the Al Hajar Mountains and specifically within the Jebel Al Jam region, as you can see on the map here. And this site is approximately 330 meters above sea level. You can see the location of Jebel Al Jam, so the site in Hatta on the map here. And as I'm sure that you all probably know, the region of the Al Hajar Mountains is rich in necropolis sites. And Hilli here in Al Ain, Al Safar in Dubai, and Shamal in Ras Al Khaimah are just a few examples. So I'll begin to talk about the activities that we have taken place so far. So we began with surveying the site, which allowed us to identify the tombs with the most information and those that we are leaving for the future with our project. Then we excavated the tombs so we can understand the construction of these tombs. And then we carried out bioarchaeological studies so we can understand the people. And finally, the reconstruction conservation. So this is where we rebuilt the tombs, and from all of these activities, people can understand who they are from who they were. So Jebel Al Jam is a mountainous region where the archaeological site is situated. And in the past, a river ran through this area named Wadi Al Jam. And all of these tombs are orientated towards this wadi, which is thought to have some ritual significance. The landscape of this site is thought to help with the distribution of the tombs, determine the distribution of the tombs. And they are located in elevated and easily visible areas. So far we have found Hafit and Amnar typologies, but obviously it does not mean that this site is restricted to these two typologies. So before we arrived at the site, 28 tombs were documented, and through our archaeological interventions so far, this number has rose to 51, and we expect that as we carry on with the project, this number will rise. So although we have found Amnar and Hafit tombs, through our archaeological studies, we have found that this site was occupied within the Wadi Suk and Iron Age periods also, and as I go through this presentation, you'll understand this a little bit more. So I'll begin with the Hafit tombs that we have found. So far there has been 7 in the site that we've found, and as you can see, these are surface tombs that are oval or circular in shape. And they are constructed using 2 rows of stones, and between these stones we have a deposit which is made of soil and small stones, as you can see. Oh, God. 1 second. This picture here really shows the 2 rows of stones in the top section there. Okay. And the base of the tomb is constructed using large native irregular stones, and as we progress to the top of the tomb, it's constructed with long, flat native stones. No mortar has been used in the construction of these tombs. The entrance is constructed using long, flat stones which are placed vertically horizontally into the tomb, and then similar stones are placed on the top of the entrance to close it and create a rectangular shape. We have a corridor that links the exterior to the interior, and as I said before, these are close to the wadi, and also the entrance are facing the wadi. As we heard from Dr. Kennett yesterday, this could have some cultural significance within this area, so it's really interesting from your presentation yesterday with our Hafid tombs as well. Be nice to chat later. So we have some similarities within Ras Al Hines and Ras Al Had, and there are differences within the construction of these tombs to ours because of the use of the native stones. So beginning with the finds within these tombs, they were quite minimal, however we did have some interesting finds within tomb 26 and 27, so I'm going to talk to you about those. Beginning with tomb 26, we had a minimum number of 2 individuals. Obviously, this could be more or less as well, but it does allude that we have a collective grave here. So beginning with individual 1, this was an adult individual that is possibly female. And as you can see, the bones were quite fragmentary, so other aspects of the biological profile were quite difficult to determine. We did have lesions of osteoarthritis and lesions pertaining to repetitive activity, such as kneeling also. And we have selected samples for C14 testing. Individual 2 was a juvenile individual, and the age of this individual was determined by the dentition at 7.5 years old. This femur here is suspected to have a possible diagnosis of Perthes disease, and this is due to the flattened femoral head and the thickened femoral neck. This is thought to have lesions of osteoarthritis later on in life, but due to this disease, you get a wearing away of the metaphyseal surface, which makes the femur difficult to age. But the disease is most likely seen in individuals aged 2 to 14, and obviously as this individual is aged 7.5, it fits quite nicely with this individual. We again have selected samples for C14 for this individual as well, both using the teeth. Our find in tomb 27 was a carnelian bead in the entrance. But obviously, overall, I did say that the finds were quite minimal, and this is not normal. So we suspect that maybe some looting happened or archaeological interventions that have not been documented. So now I move on to the Umnar tombs. Again, these are surface tombs, and they are circular in shape. This specific tomb that we have found measures 5 meters in diameter, and these are constructed using irregular native stones that are arranged concentrically, again with no mortar. These tombs are constructed on a singular row of stones which acts as a podium, and this row of stones is more pronounced from the rest of the tomb. Also, the entrance of these tombs are elevated and again orientated towards the wadi. And we have an internal wall in these tombs that is connected to the exterior structure and is aligned with the entrance. Again, we have a corridor linking the external area to the internal area. We have similarities with the Umnar tombs in Bat in Oman, with tomb 154 and 155. As you can see, the internal wall structure. And we also have a similarity in the Umnar island with tomb 4. And this is nice because you can see the internal wall aligned with the entrance. We have a similarity in Al Safar, but this is not internally. As you can see, it was more constructurally in terms of our tomb. And within this tomb there were commingled remains, which confirms for this typology it's likely to be collective burials. So the finds within the Omnar tombs HY29A were soft stone, worked shell, pottery, and fragmented human bones. So obviously this seems quite a high percentage within the tomb, but they were fragmentary. So starting with the soft stone, we obviously, as you probably know, categorise this by looking at the decoration, which is a common methodology that's used. So this soft stone has rows of dotted circles, and around the rim it has incised lines. This is characteristic of the Wadi Suk period, and we had similarities in Shamal, as you can see with the dotted circle rows, and this is our exhibit here, and the incised lines around the rim. Now on to the Iron Age softstone, and this is characterised by vertical, horizontal and diagonal lines, and sometimes these diagonal lines form triangular shapes, and above these triangular shapes we have horizontal lines here, which is characteristic of the Iron Age period, and we had similarities in Jebel al-Buhays in BHS 84. So this was our worked shell artefact. As you can see, it has a rosette design, and on the other face it has two incised circles, holes kind of thing. As it was fragmentary, it's quite difficult to date, but we have found similarities in Sham Fujairah, and this was linked to the Wadi Suk period, and Jebel al-Buhays was linked to the Iron Age period. This is an example of some Wadi Suk pottery that we have found, and some examples of Iron Age pottery. So as I mentioned at the beginning, we have these Omnar and Hafit structures, but we can confirm with the exhibits that we have found that this area was occupied within the Wadi Suk and Iron Age periods as well. The bones within this tomb were quite minimal. The most significant find was the teeth that you can see here. We have selected one sample for C14, which was the most intact sample that we could find, but obviously you can see that they are quite fragmentary. Due to the assemblage within this tomb, we can't define whether it was collective or not. But obviously compared to the literature, as I mentioned at the beginning, it is quite likely in this typology that we would have a collective grave. Although we cannot confirm the number of individuals, we can confirm that humans once lie in this grave. Now I'm going to move on to the conservation of the Hafit and the Omnar tombs. So beginning with the Hafit tombs, it was very important that in our reconstruction we use the original building materials, so the native stones and no mortar. So this picture at the top here, number 1, you can see the original state of the tomb as we arrived. And number 2 is the beginning of the conservation process after it had been excavated. So we laid a mesh on top of this original structure, and this is so that it can be defined from the reconstruction. So you can see in the bottom picture here the mesh laying over and our reconstruction on top. This is really important for when maybe new literature comes out, and the fact that we've used no mortar, this is a reversible technique. Also, the tombs, the height of the tomb was determined by the natural progression as we began to build, and small stones were used for the roof of the Hafit tombs because they were found in a deposit when we were excavating. These reconstructions of both the Hathi and the Umnar tombs were directed and executed by Sylvia Marin and Domingo Lopez. So this is the final reconstruction that we have created. We have decided to only complete half of the tomb so that the external and internal aspects of the construction can be fully appreciated. And this is just a picture of looking from the entrance inside to the tomb, and we just thought this was a really nice picture to understand the construction. Okay, so this diagram here is just to explain the construction a little bit further. So, as I mentioned before, we have 2 rows of stones. So the yellow is the internal wall, and the grey is the external. And in between with the green, we have this deposit that I was talking about with the soil and the small stones. Now, these blue stones are really important because they are counterbalancing the weight of the yellow stones. And if we did not have them, this whole construction would not be strong and would collapse. Now on to the conservation of the Umnar tombs. So again, you can see in this first picture the state of the when we arrived to the site. And then again, once it is excavated, we placed the mesh, the same technique that we used with the Hafid tombs, to conserve the original construction and define it from that we have reconstructed. And this is the beginning of the restoration process. Here's just some working photos that you can see for our reconstruction, which is really nice to understand the activities that have taken place. So this is just the diagram again, but for the Umnar tomb, so you can understand the construction of this. So we have the external wall here, again with the grey, the similar colours, and the yellow with the internal. And this is our internal supporting structure. This wall that I said was connected to the outside and is aligned with the entrance. Okay? So these black stones here were found around the tomb, and due to their dimensions being 70 to 75 centimetres and their shapes, we could not place these in any other position in the tomb, and it was most likely for them to just close this gap here. And I have another hypothesis to explain this further. Okay, so because the internal wall is funnel shaped, which is smaller at the bottom, larger at the top. These black stones from the previous slide fit nicely here, and as we reconstructed, we built up, the internal space became more narrow as it came towards the top. So if this wall was completely vertical, the dimensions of these black stones would not meet the gap, so this whole construction would actually collapse. This is a photographic representation here for you to understand the funnel-shaped internal wall, so smaller at the bottom, larger at the top. And also, this methodology was suggested within Jebel al-Buhay's site also. Although this was within a Wadi Suk tomb, you can see in the diagram at the bottom that stones were used similarly to close this gap. So this is our final reconstruction of one of the Umnar tombs. And as you can see, again, we have only completed half of this tomb to fully appreciate the external and internal structure. Okay, so thank you very much for your time, and I'd like to take any questions. Thank you. Thank you.